Are you racist?
Tough questions about relationships between law enforcement and communities of color.
Johannes Measurely spent less time in jail than Michael Vick, right? That's a very difficult thing for a community to accept.
It started off as a way for both sides to voice their concerns, but over time, the conversations became heated and personal.
We don't train officers to kill, right? That's not what they're trained to do. They're trained to stop the threat.
95% are police officers. You have about 5% that are pigs.
I disagree with your statistic.
And after a year, both sides are slowly moving towards common ground. Hello, I'm Paul Chambers, and welcome to the Barbershop Forum special. For more than a year, I've moderated informal conversations between law enforcement and the community, bridging the gap between the two. We've gone to 6 cities and 3 different counties. But the very first one started right here in San Leandro at Master's Barbershop in October of last year. More than 30 men and women from all walks of life.
Benjamin Cover here at Master Barbershop.
Officer Ken Shedd, San Leandro Police Department.
Yeah, I'm Jerry Elster. I'm formerly incarcerated, first of all. I did 27 years on a gang-related homicide.
Sekou Millington. I'm a lieutenant with the Oakland Police Department.
My name is Reverend Harry Williams.
Came together at Master's Barbershop in San Leandro. The purpose? To have a town hall discussion about what's facing the African American and Latino community when it comes to their dealings with law enforcement.
There exists this gap between the community and police officers and just the criminal justice system.
Those here agreed that gap didn't just start. It's something that's been around for generations.
During slavery, it was the brother that wanted to read and wanted to run away and be free. You know, he was the black criminal.
I've been in situations where I did not like the police. I grew up right here in Oakland.
Nearly everyone in the shop said they've had negative dealings with law enforcement or felt discriminated against at different times in their lives. A commonality for both sides, but the separation began to grow when the discussion dealt with difficult topics, like fatal officer-involved shootings. In 2009, Oscar Grant, an unarmed black man, was shot and killed by a BART police officer.
Johannes Measurely spent less time in jail than Michael Vick, right? That's a very difficult thing for a community to accept.
It's a situation to me where officers either appear to be overly aggressive and or afraid of a situation and therefore respond in a way that to me is inappropriate.
This topic led some to question, why must officers use lethal force?
We don't train officers to kill, right? That's not what they're trained to do. They're trained to stop the threat.
Others ask, could an officer just wound the person by shooting them in a body part?
I know my capabilities and I know how I shoot. I would probably miss an arm or a leg. And so just so happened that round would travel down the field and hit someone else.
Deadly force is called deadly force because it's meant to stop the threat.
Just that little bit of accountability, some say, will go a long way when officers aren't afraid to say their colleagues are wrong. That's just one of several ways that this group say leads to solutions, which can bring about change that can heal the community. The first step they recommend is looking in the mirror and starting a conversation at home.
We all have biases, and whether we know it or not, we do have them. And in recognizing them, we take the first step in making a change.
We have to educate not only the public, but officers in general. We just need to respect each other.
Law enforcement invited us along to better explain deadly force, but through the eyes of community members, as civilians step in the shoes of sheriff deputies at the Alameda County Sheriff's Office Force Option Simulator. Angela Webster is one of 4 people who came to Alameda County Sheriff's Office Force Option Simulator. Instructors put the group through various scenarios. Webster's involved a man with a knife who wanted to kill himself.
My temperature in my body went up just from that simulation, and I know in real life it's, real intense. So it just gives me a better understanding as to what they go through.
Nervous? My heart's still beating.
Craig Barber's scenario dealt with a domestic dispute. While answering the call, the suspect reaches into his back pocket asking, "Do you want my wallet?" Barber did not shoot, and the suspect actually pulled out a wallet. Barber says the course was eye-opening.
I was trying to get some other guys to come with me,
But they're like, nah, I ain't gonna go through all that. And I'm like, man, how you gonna understand what's going on with them if you won't get involved with what they got going on?
Now, this course isn't for everyone. It's designed for officers, but the civilians who took the class today say it was extremely helpful, and they plan to take what they learned and teach it to others.
Well, I'm gonna tell them, man, if you put yourself in their position and someone reaches behind their back, you know what I mean, what you gonna do? You gonna wait and see if they pull out a gun, or you gonna shoot them first?
Just gives me a better understanding as to what they go through and more respect.
Are you racist?
That question asked by a little boy from Oakland made many people uncomfortable. The response from the city's police chief just ahead. But up next, a direct result of the positivity of the Barbershop Forum, when a Bay Area high school teacher invites me to talk to the students about the progress and how they can help.
When I saw that KTVU and you in particular were doing conversations around policing and the community, it tied in very much to the conversations we're having about race.
Now, this next story is a direct result of the Barbershop Forum, as a group of criminal justice students from De La Salle High School and myself had an open and honest conversation after their teacher invited me to talk to the students about the forums. Now, usually I don't give my personal opinions in a story, but this time it's a little different. More than 50 students from 2 different classes at De La Salle High School have been learning about criminal justice. Their teacher invited me to speak to the students about what I've been learning in the barbershop discussions.
I've been in situations where I did not like the police.
Between law enforcement and communities of color.
When I saw that KTVU and you in particular were doing conversations around policing and the community, it tied in very much to the conversations we're having about race.
Many in the class either have family members or want to be law enforcement officers. The class has been covering issues from officers-involved shootings to implicit bias. The same topics that we've discussed during our barbershop town halls. It's an open dialogue. There's nothing that's off limits. You can say, you can ask any question.
You've lived in different communities in the United States, culture-wise. How have you seen or experienced racism?
As an African-American man, yes, I felt the racism every which way I go, in every city. It doesn't matter where I go. First time I ever get a gun pulled on me is here in the Bay Area. The only time I ever had a gun pulled on me was in the Bay Area. And the only person that ever pulled a gun on me was a law enforcement officer.
So you were saying how if you're walking down the street in what you're wearing, you'd be accepted, and if you walk down the street in like a hoodie looking kind of shady, that...
Wait, stop right there. No, I'm not, no. I just want you to think about what you said. Yeah. Why? Because I wear a hoodie, am I shady? Dude said next, he's got a hoodie, is he shady? And I'm not attacking you. Yeah. Please understand what I'm saying. The majority of students are Caucasian and say they're inspired from what they're hearing. But since they're not in attendance at either the Oakland or San Leandro discussions, they have a lot of questions of their own.
Why did the Alameda County Sheriff's Department initially not want white Caucasian people at the the town hall meeting?
I don't want to put it on an entire department that didn't want the Caucasian officers there, because there were some that did and there were some that didn't.
When you're reporting on something that has to do with African Americans, do you ever feel like people think you have a certain bias toward it?
Oh, of course. And it comes from both sides. I get African-American people tell me, well, you didn't ask this, and you didn't say that, so now I'm not black enough. Well, looking at my skin, I think I'm pretty black. But then you have people on the other side that says, well, you're being tougher on that. I can't really worry about everyone else. I can only give you the facts. This is what happens.
But is it hard to keep your opinion out of your reporting when an issue affects you personally, like the issue between African-Americans and the police?
I can talk about my own personal experiences, but also tell the story of what's going on. But it's always good to be honest and upfront to say, hey, this is coming from me. The teacher and students say they appreciate the conversation we had, and they will use future town halls in their classroom in hopes of bridging the divide they have in their school and community.
I think it does help, and it's going to take time for more and more people to get involved, and the more people that get involved, the bigger impact it's going to have.
But I think what's really important too is to have them be critical thinkers if they get involved in law enforcement, to see and understand the communities that they're serving, the issues that they're facing, and the reality that's not theirs.
After the break,
there is a paradigm shift going on in law enforcement.
Leaders from the court system and Bay Area law enforcement are put on the hot seat.
I commend you for what you're doing at schools, but that doesn't mean when I walk home and I see your car, my heart doesn't race.
After several barbershop forums, it was time for the community members to take their concerns and issues directly to the leaders here in the Bay Area, putting them on the hot seat. The barbershop forums came about because of the vision of 3 men, 2 law enforcement officers and a community organizer.
Both my sons were with Oscar Grant when Oscar Grant was murdered. They were on a platform with him. So I became an organizer.
But as a law enforcement officer, they say that was wrong. That's a question that we've gotten.
You to lead in our organization
to any school county who apply to be in the Justice Academy.
What's going on, especially.
There is a paradigm shift going on in law enforcement about just because you could, i.e. legally, meet a threshold for the use of force doesn't mean you should.
Why do you claim that these investigations are done independently when they're actually done side by side?
They will observe or participate in the statement taken by the officers who were involved in the shooting, but after that, there's no side by side.
As the conversations continued, one question stood out when a little boy from Oakland asked members of the panel,
"Are you racist?"
Not every cop is racist. Most of us are not. I am not.
How many of your police officers reside in the cities that you are representatives of?
25% of our department lives between 0 and 10 miles of San Leandro.
In Richmond proper, about 25%, about a quarter of our officers live in Richmond.
What are you doing for your actual recruiting efforts in the community?
I want to recruit in non-traditional arenas. I want people who come from different backgrounds and think differently.
Every summer we have about 20 college kids who come and work in different parts of the DA office that we're recruiting from our county.
The common thread in all of the barbershop forums is community, because law enforcement officers stress they can't do their job without you.
When we have this community buy-in, we get better results because you feel like you have a say-so in what we're trying to do.
We need to talk to the community about their needs and about their concerns and about their struggles. What we're doing at the San Leandro Police Department is really trying to target the youth of our community, specifically those at the high schools.
I commend you for what you're doing at schools, but that doesn't mean when I walk home and I see your car, my heart doesn't race.
With the 7th barbershop discussion in the books, we revisited some of the people who've attended and taken part in past forums. We've done 7 of these. Have you learned anything on the way?
If law enforcement is legitimate and we show transparency, I think just the authentic conversations help the community see that we are legitimate.
What do you think people are getting from this? Do you think it's working? Do you think this is exactly what this community needs in the community of the Bay Area?
I think it's exactly what it needs. I think the more dialogue we can have from the community with police leaders, community leaders is extremely important.
The monthly barbershop conversations will continue working towards a better understanding between citizens and law enforcement.
Enough is enough. Let's see, can we form some resolution and bring about a positive change in our community?
Still ahead, some took these words as a personal attack.
95% are police officers. We have about 5% that are pigs.
I disagree with your statistic.
Months later, how both sides feel.
I did not grow up in your same set of circumstances. I didn't grow up where you grew up.
After a successful year of forums meant to bridge the gap between law enforcement and community, the group celebrated its 1st anniversary. It was a celebration to honor and give back to the community. As the Barbershop Forum turned one, more than 100 people showed up because these men and women have worked tirelessly to bridge the gap between law enforcement and citizens, because in this room, there's no divide. It's community first. Law enforcement officers are community. We're community first. They just put on their uniforms and that's their job. The road here was tough.
When I first attended it, I didn't have the slightest idea what I was attending.
Neither did we. The first Barbershop Forum took place on October 24th, 2016 at Master's Barbershop in San Leandro. At that time, there were roughly 40 people in attendance.
I'm Jerry Elster. I'm formerly incarcerated, first of all. I did 27 years.
That was Jerry Elster. Last year during that forum, he was upset and stormed out because he felt the conversation favored law enforcement. We got an argument, a disagreement, a heated one, because you got up and walked out. Law enforcement, citizens, and those who were once in jail and are now free, which this group refers to as returning citizens.
I've never expected it to be this big and so integrated with the community and the members.
I never thought that our returning citizens would come back into our communities and play such an important role in bridging the gap between us and the community.
The group's slogan is "Together we are one," but building relationships through dialogue wasn't easy.
The conversation has to be real, and can be difficult.
95% are police officers. You have about 5% that are pigs. Those are the ones that cause all the ill light on the rest of the good officers.
I disagree with your statistic.
As the group worked to make a change in the community, forum members, including myself, were honored by the Alameda County District Attorney for giving back. In several cities, Richmond, Hayward, Antioch, and San Francisco all played host to 11 forums in 3 different counties.
I have actually witnessed members in this room, people who have been coming to the Barbershop Forum, change attitude.
I learned another way of how to approach that, right? And say, well, okay, if I leave the conversation, then there is no resolution.
But the biggest accomplishment by the forum may be one you never saw on television. In October, the forum went to San Francisco Juvenile Hall, where we met this teen.
I don't like the police. Don't talk to me through the police. I don't mess with the police, period.
During that forum, the ice began to break for Joy.
Most of these people are African American. I got the opportunity to see that all my people could change and that they could do more than just be delinquents or in prison.
Other members of the forum decided to reach out and mentor teens who were at risk.
I stayed in contact with her, and I'm her mentor now. I went and visited her last weekend, and I plan to make this a long-lasting relationship.
That's why the one-year anniversary was so important. Local restaurants donated food.
When the opportunity came up to be able to support the 1-year anniversary of this amazing forum, we thought it would be a great way to extend Salute's gratitude towards the community.
The rest of the food, freshly cooked on a grill by Barbershop Forum member Kazim, was purchased by members of the Barbershop Forum, who wanted to express their thanks to those who believed in the movement. As the first year of the Barbershop Forum comes to an end, it was time to reflect on past discussions, so I brought in a few people who've made an impact to talk about the year ahead. But first, we had some unfinished business about a negative comment made at an Oakland barbershop during a forum about a small percentage of officers that one man called pigs. The first thing I've got to talk about, because you guys are sitting here, we had that conversation about 95%, 5%. Dwight, I'm going to start with you. Has that changed? Do you still feel the same way?
You know, yes, I do. I think what was missed in the whole discussion is that I gave a 95% compliment to public servants and respect. And the only thing that resonated was that 5%.
And I made sure I did put in the 95%. You said that, and I made sure that was in there, but I think people heard that 5% and they heard pigs.
Well, that's the acronym of the time and space that I grew up in, that people who acted inappropriately and unprofessionally as police officers, that's what we call them.
I wasn't always a police officer. Like I always say, I wasn't born in this uniform. I had negative experiences with the police also. That's what made me want to become a law enforcement officer.
You know, you heard the gentleman's response, and that day you were offended by it. Are you still offended by it?
No, and let me tell you why. Because I think your comment threw me off guard. I did not grow up in your same set of circumstances. I didn't grow up where you grew up.
but you had some life experiences, bad life experiences with the police. So I can't invalidate your feelings.
Lieutenant, are you criticized by some people thinking that you're turning your back on law enforcement by being part of this?
Not to my face. That's not to say that, you know, conversations aren't taking place behind my back, but that doesn't bother me because this work is so important.
I can guarantee I am looked at differently. Me knowing both sides, you know, a lot of guys in the streets, you know, I'm born and raised in Oakland, California, and I'm also trained as a law enforcement officer, been through the academy, have all the training that they have.
Do you think it's working?
I think it's definitely working.
How so?
Just the relationships I've grown to have with like other law enforcement officers that I never would have said anything to.
But we have to start bringing the officers that's not of African American or not of color to the table and have that dialogue and that conversation.
As long as the good law enforcement officers are willing to extend themselves, to share information to the community otherwise normally won't get shared, I think that's the beginning.
We are never going to think our job is complete, what we're trying to achieve. We'll never be satisfied that it's complete. So we would never realize that we're a little further than we think we are.
People are listening.
Right.
You know, it's up to us now to take that momentum and that energy and take who else we would like to affect and have listen to us.
What else is the Barbershop doing in 2018? What's the plan ahead?
We really want to reach out more to our youth.
Maybe we need to have a barbershop forum at the academy. Just a sit down with new recruits.
Encouraging people to register to vote, but also at every barbershop forum, we're going to have some sort of employment resource available for people.
The Barbershop Forum will start up again in the new year right here at Mass's Barbershop in San Leandro, where we'll continue to build trust, solution-based, and community involvement. Thanks again, I'm Paul Chambers. See you on air and online.